So data mining for 10.1.5 continues, and now there is brand new info on these time waves that are coming, and we're seeing two in particular incredibly interesting timelines. There is a completely dead planet of Azeroth where the old gods defeated the Titan invasion and ruled without opposition, a place without heroes, without dragons, and more than likely a place where the world soul of Azeroth was successfully turned into a being of the void. On the other, there is a Titan utopia where all disorder was rooted out and all Titan experiments succeeded. We have info about the zones, the maps. We're actually fighting N'Zoth, we're fighting Freya, and this only seems to be the beginning. We have also determined the Lich King fight. We're fighting an old Varium that leads the Fanatical Alliance. So what is all this new information, and is this really just an alternate reality or a setup for a future storyline? So before we get into the video, I want to show you guys the Bridge Wallet. As you know, I've been using it for over 2 years, and I've been also using the key case as well for a few months, which fits perfectly. Now, the Bridge Wallet is like the perfect minimalist, like the super cool but really sleek wallet. You can fit up to 12 cards, there's cash on the side, and really it is just amazing. There's over 30 designs with burnt titanium and carbon fiber. So make sure to use my code DORAN to get a 10% discount, and check out my link in the description below. I'm guessing by now all of you are familiar with the new 10.1.5 time waves that are going to be a pretty big feature of the new patch, and I'd say probably some of the most interesting content that we have seen so far, as we really are seeing some super interesting alternate universes. Now, I've made a similar video to this, but we actually have new information from only a few days back, as some new bosses came through on the PTR, and we can now kind of know what will actually be happening. Right now, these time waves seem to be sort of like weekly events and events where you can get loot from, and some really interesting loot as well, like Frostmourne from a different universe or Warglaves of Azeroth. The premise of the entire thing is that the time waves are just all out of whack, and the main universe where we are is getting invaded by these drastically different universes, and we have to go in and stop them at the source. And we have seen some incredibly interesting realities, such as a potential Lich King Uther instead of Arthas, or Veressa being raised instead of Sylvanas as the Banshee Queen. However, why I think this is actually interesting isn't because of what appears to be side content really, but because I think this is actually going to be relevant for the main storyline. Now, Blizzard has already confirmed that the old gods can sort of see through time. We had seen the supposedly defeated N'Zoth learning from us in the past to potentially prevent his demise in the future. So with their storyline, a lot of these might actually be foreshadowing for what is to come for the actual main storyline. In particular, we have two incredibly interesting scenarios, and we can actually see what they look like, at least up to a certain point at this point in time. So there is Ul'dah and Askroth, and they're essentially two polar opposite timelines, like two completely different versions of Azeroth. One is Ul'dah, a Titan utopia where their plan was 100% successful. There is no shadow, all disorder was rooted out. I'm guessing all the old gods were rooted out as well, and all Titan experiments came to fruition. The second is Askroth, a timeline where the Titan invasion of Azeroth completely failed and the old gods prevailed. And the reality is that we in the main timeline are kind of somewhere in the middle between these two extremes. I mean, we have a place where the Titans won, but not really, as the Titan plans ultimately sort of failed with the Curse of Flesh, and the old gods were defeated, but, you know, not really, since they're obviously still around and they're just constantly bothering us. So let's look at these extremes. Let's start with Ul'dah. Now, I don't think this is all there is to it, and based on other data mined NPCs, there probably will be more, but the Bronze Dragon, as a being of the Titans, is actually impressed by this realm, and she thinks we could actually learn so much from this, probably like what went right instead of wrong in our universe. But there is no time to learn, as we have to get out quick and defeat the boss. The boss of the instance is Freya, which I gotta say is kind of strange. I mean, why would we fight her if this is a utopia for the beings of life? In my opinion, I'd say this might be more like a dictatorship where, yeah, life is obviously doing well, but probably akin to like light controlled Draenor. Like, they're doing well if you're following the Titan Order and their agenda. If you're not, you're just a part of this order, and we're just gonna purge you from the face of the earth. Unfortunately though, aside from fighting Freya briefly, we don't really learn all that much from this place. On the other hand, I think Askroth is actually even more interesting, but at the same time, like, super confusing. I mean, we're told by the Bronze Dragon fight that this is a time wave where the old gods have defeated the Titans, conquered all of creation, and have completely fed on the planet. The place has no champions, no dragons, no heroes. It is essentially an old god dystopia. Now, we have data mined some info, but as I said, it is kind of confusing. So the boss you're fighting in this instance is actually this manifestation on from N'Zoth in the form of an old god general creature, but about a month ago we have datamined an actual model of N'Zoth, like his full body, which is why I think we're actually going to be returning to this place on another occasion, so this is probably not all there is to it. The datamine map for this right now obviously seems to be Nilotar. Unfortunately, we can't really see all that much other than this very linear instance, but we are told that the planet itself is actually dead and that the old gods have fed upon it. Sulfuras, the weapon of Ragnaros, seems to be the reward from this place, which means that the elementals have probably remained enslaved to the old gods. Previously, we speculated that this is a place where the old gods battled the elemental lords, which is what happened in the original questline where we first heard the new Dragonflight N'Zoth whispers. However, this reveals to us that the Black Empire won the Titan War and fended off their invasion successfully. What I do kinda find confusing though is like what happened to Azeroth in the World Soul. As far as we know, the goal of the old gods wasn't to eat the planet, but to infuse the world with the void and then turn it into a weapon for the void. Based on the recent retcons and some old god changes, they kinda might have changed the plans, but seeing that the Bronze Dragon refers to this as a dead planet, it could mean that this mission actually succeeded and that they did in fact do this, and what we're seeing right now is remains of like a shell of Azeroth, a dead planet without a world soul that is just completely infested by old gods and their minions. If this really is the case, it would be super interesting to see like what the rest of Azeroth looks like some other major zone. Maybe we might even see like a place with like a huge hole where the world soul was taken out. But if this is all there really is to it, I would say that, I don't know, this entire thing would be kind of lame. I mean, I do feel like based on the other documents and foreshadowings from Dragonflight about how the Titans hid the Black Empire civilization and just completely demonized them, there really was a big potential to show the Black Empire as sort of more neutral. I mean, sure, an absolutely evil civilization, but I guess with a bit more nuance than just, you know, bug people that are just eating the planet alive and just destroying everything that is to it. However, based on the fact that we didn't see the new datamine model of N'Zoth, my thoughts are that we're going to probably be returning to Azeroth on probably another occasion, and that this is really not all there is to it. While, of course, all of this is just an alternate universe, the reality is that I do feel like this is expanding the lore for what is to happen, and I don't think it is a coincidence that they're probably showing us two drastically different alternate timelines, the Titan and the Old God one, probably so we can kind of see two absolute extreme versions of Azeroth. The interesting thing to also know, though, is that out of all the old gods, we're not seeing or fighting Y'Shaarj, the strongest old god, but in fact the weakest one, N'Zoth, which, as I said, I think this is a continuation of him coming back to the timelines or learning new information so that he can free himself in the main one, which is why I think this is more than just a simple time travel scenario. Now, interestingly enough, other than this, we have some further really interesting hints. We have a reality Asmorn where we're fighting the Lich King. Once again, as I said, I think this is just a small part of it, as here, we're only fighting the Lich King at the Frozen Throne, but we're not seeing the datamined Uther and Vressa models, which we have actually datamined, which means that there is probably a part 2 to these time rifts as well. We know that Azabrat is now confirmed to be a reality where the Burning Legion managed to win the War of the Ancients and completely succeeded in their plans, and the boss for this place is Illidan. We have another really interesting reality, and that is Warlands, that you probably already heard of. This is a place where the Horde and Alliance never stop fighting, and now they continue to fight over a wasteland of Azeroth. Varian actually survived in this universe, and he's an old man, and we are actually finding him as a boss in this time rift. This is like a dark reality where there were no mediating factors, and we have pretty much the worst side of both factions. Another really interesting thing to note is that Varian is actually missing an eye, and essentially all Alliance characters are missing an eye as well, which in my opinion is probably like a symbol of their fanaticism and just completely blind loyalty to their leader. I'm not saying like this is symbolically, like they probably damaged their own eyes so that they can resemble Varian, which just goes to show how fanatical they became. So overall, these time rifts really do seem like a pretty genius new content that they're doing. We're probably going to see more of it soon, as at the moment we're only getting little bits of information about once a week. Thank you for watching. Check out all extras, possibly falling to the old gods by clicking on the screen, and check out the Nodes Academy for videos on real world history. See you next time.